Hey, what's happening, peeps? Appreciate y'all tuning in today's episode. We got another fire episode. I got some content I think you guys gonna find some value in. Before we get too deep in today's content, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Tell a friend to tell a friend. I appreciate all the feedback I've been getting. Just dropped the previous episode. We talked about some things that maybe being myths or people just being misinformed about the work culture in itself. And so really positive feedback on that. I appreciate everyone who's been reaching out and everyone who subscribed to the channel as well. And I hope to just continue to bring content that you guys find value in as well. So let's get into today's episode. And so there's kind of two worlds I'm going to be talking about in today's episode. I feel like there's a world of stay at one company, work your entire career in that company, work your way up the chain, up the ladder there as well. And then there's the world of you may have to switch employers for a time or two over your work career. And a lot of people will say, well, which one makes the most sense? And so I really wanted to dive into that a little bit today's episode and just talk about the pros and cons of each. I'm going to give you guys some tips when you're thinking about making that decision and how you should go about making that decision there as well. And so I've got them down listed. I've got the pros and cons. I want to talk about each one in itself. I'm going to go through the pros and the cons of each one. I'm going to start with just working at one company. And then we'll shift to people that switch employers and go to a couple of different companies over the work career as well. So first, I'm going to start with the pros, right? I've got them listed here in order. And what I'll start off with here on a pro for working at the one company your entire career is just you really get deep company roots. A lot of expertise in the actual organization itself. You really know the ins and outs of how the company moves. You are very familiar with the culture of the actual organization there. And so you get very ingrained in that aspect of it. You'll hear the term institutional knowledge. And that just means that it's not just the X and O's. You've been around for changes that have happened within the organization. And you understand that, and you understand maybe some things that aren't in the guidelines or aren't in the books there or the protocols. You just understand that because you know how the culture or how the company is and how it works there as well. And so that's the first one I have. I feel like, that's probably the biggest value of all of the ones that I have listed here is you just get really ingrained, entrenched in that particular company there. The next one I have listed is loyalty. And so companies really like to use that term. But what does that loyalty mean? It means you stay with this organization. You have that deep company expertise, institutional knowledge. And so, you are very ingrained. And a lot of companies will appreciate that, right? They appreciate you staying with them through thick and thin, right? And especially in both situations when you've experienced both times with the company. If it's a good organization, they're going to appreciate the fact that you were loyal to them in those given times there as well. And I think that's a pro when you're in an organization or the company that has good values and they are a proper or a profitable company, or they're actually successful in their actual industry or field. Sometimes you work in a non-for-profit or non-profit space, so it may not be for profit, but essentially they're moving in a positive direction, and that's a good situation to be a loyal employee in as well. The next one I have here listed, it kind of goes to the first one, but I just want to dig in a little bit further on that. When you're with the company your entire career, you have a lot of established relationships, right? Think of that. You work at a company. There are people that you started with over your work career. They're going to move probably into different roles. You're going to interact with different people that come and go in your team or within your organization, and they move on. And so you have a lot of established relationships within the company, meaning you are well connected within the company. Some things that, again, it's just institutional knowledge that can really help push the buck along, or someone may be a little bit familiar, although that's not their job title. Because of relationships, Chris or Sally used to work in this particular in this particular team when it used to do things this way. So let me reach out to them and get some information there as well. You also can return the favor in that aspect of it, but it does help you also in terms of job progressions as well over the work career, meaning you're going to have people that will vouch for you because they know you. They know you worked with the company for 10 years. And so they can vouch for your work production, your demeanor, your relationship, how you treat people, your character. All that's going to be easier to be vouched for when you are working in an environment where you have established relationships there as well. So I think that's another big one as well. But you want to think about that as in your day-to-day job currently here as well. The next one I have is just the company benefits, right? You get familiar with them, whether it's 401k, whether it's health insurance. Companies will have different perks. I highly encourage you to understand all your company's benefits, not just health and retirement. But some companies have a lot of perks that can help you, whether it's travel, purchasing a car, various things that you can do that may be able to help you with your growth in terms of professional or personal life there as well. Obviously, if there's college, if you guys want to go to college, companies will pay for college or some sort. Understand that that element as well. And this just a little note on that, paying for college there. It doesn't always have to be in the exact field you're in. It still may have to relate to the company itself, right? So I'm working at finance. I can't go, to culinary school and have them pay for it. But you can use that as a means to kind of help build your career out as well. So if you're in finance, but you feel like you want to be in IT, it may be an opportunity where you can do finance, work at that job, and also, use that as a means to develop your skill set in IT there as well. So company benefits, right? I think that's another good one. You just get familiar with them. The other one is just stability of the company, right? You get more ingrained, more entrenched in that culture there as well. You get more locked in. You become more a part of the foundation of the company. It's going to typically be as long as the company is, well ran, it's going to be a more stable environment for you in that aspect of it. And so, those were really the top pros that I had listed for working for one company your entire career. I'm going to shift gears here. I'm going to move over to the cons there as well. And so, the first con that I have here is pay, right? And so I hate to be the bearer of bad news on that, but a lot of times internal candidates will get a lower salary than an external candidate. You can look this up, but it's pretty common there as well. And it's because you've worked with that company so long, and they feel like they've already got you, and you're not even thinking about looking outside of the company there. So you may get knocked with pay. Sometimes if you're in your role for a long period of time, there's not any pay raises. You may be behind what the market pays or what the market value is of your current role just because you've been there so long. You started at this salary and they've increased it maybe, or they haven't increased it, but it hasn't been at the rate of what the market is as well. So, think about that aspect of it. Anytime you're always, get your money is what I would say in that aspect as well. So the next one I have it's one of the pros as well, right? Loyalty, right? When we talk about, getting deep company, institutional knowledge, becoming loyal to the company there as well, you may get mistreated, right? Because they may feel like you're here. We know you're going to do it. So we're going to make you work extra hours. We may not pay you as much. You may not develop further skills to progress in career as well. And so it can be a gift and a curse, that loyalty aspect of it. So you need to be thinking about that. But it is something that I do want you to recognize. It does happen often, and assess your current career, right? Is it a situation where you're experiencing some of that as well? So the next piece I have as a con is limited exposure. What I mean by that is you are ingrained in this culture, you're ingrained in this company, and you only know one way to do it, and that's the way this company does it, right? But you may have a competitor in the same industry, in the same field, or multiple competitors, and they do things very different, right? Think of that in the aspect of Apple versus the Google phone, right? They're both cell phones, right? But if you only worked at Apple or you only worked at Google, you're only going to know the way that Apple does it or the way that Google does it, right? And so if you work in both, you have some more skill sets, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But you just don't get to really develop yourself further in that aspect of it, and so you're limiting your exposure in terms of your skills or things that you may want to do. And the next one I have kind of builds on that limited exposure piece, but it's kind of something I want to go in a little bit of a different direction on. Innovation, right? And so what I mean by innovation is, unless you're with a company that's kind of newly or growing there, that company just really gets kind of stuck in their ways and they're not really trying to change it. It's one of those if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of situation. So, it's limited exposure is one thing in terms of you not understanding what's going on with the competitors as well. But then there's an aspect of within a company, that company should be trying to grow within their product, within their service, within their field. And if they're not innovating, it's still going to be a limiting factor to you in your career there as well. And so the last one I have is just you can become too dependable on the company, right? And that falls in line with all those other skill things I've just previously mentioned when it comes to limited exposure and innovation, right? Meaning you didn't develop your skills because the company limited your exposure. They weren't innovating anymore. They were kind of set in their ways. And if the company experiences some rough times, right, you are dependent on that company to continue to pay you or give you a job, provide you a means to provide for your family and yourself there as well. And you don't have any other skills that you can go to another company and make yourself more marketable on as well. And so you need to be thinking about the pros and the cons on that aspect of it. I wanted to hit them both for working for one company. And so I'm going to shift gears here and just talk about the pros and the cons of working for a couple different companies there as well. And so the first pro I have is just that I listed as the new car smell, right? And so that is that aspect of, you're really getting a different experience, right? You are experiencing diversity on a multitude of fashions, right? You are working with a different company that has a totally different process than maybe the company you work for. You're working with a different set of people than what you previously worked for. That have different backgrounds, different culture, different walks of life there as well. And if you're relocating, you may be moving to a different part of the country or a different city as well. So that's a whole nother aspect of diversity to even think about in that aspect of it. But it will expose you to different elements that you may not be exposed to working at one company over your entire career there as well. And then within that experience, or that leads to the next point, which is just you're going to learn new info because you're in this new environment, right? It's diverse. These are new people, new ideas, new ways of thinking to bring to the table there as well. And so that can actually accelerate your development or your growth in your career, right? You're not just learning at the pace of this one set of group of people, and this is how they've learned it. This group may be able to learn it a lot fast, may be able to teach you that a lot faster, or they may be able to teach you something to add on to what you've already built up or developed there as well. And so you're going to learn new skills, learn new info, get access to new information. And I think that's a great thing overall for anyone's career there. The third one, I had it as a con on the one company here, but I have it as a pro. So it can give you a pay increase, right? I mentioned it previously. A lot of times you switching companies gives you the opportunity to maybe reset the bar in terms of your salary, or, you can kind of negotiate that a little bit more as an external candidate versus an internal candidate. Also, you have an advantage, right? I want you to make sure you remember this, right? You have information from one of their competitors, right? So not only do you have the skill set, but you know something that you can bring to the table that they may not be aware of. And so think about that all times when you're in that salary negotiation. And ongoing, right? You should always keep that back in your mind, what you learned from the company. Don't throw it away. You may not use it, or you may only use a portion of it, or it may be a point in time down the road that you may use it there as well. But it is a good opportunity that you can, get it. It is a great opportunity for you to get a pay increase there in that aspect of it. The fourth one I have listed here is adaptability. By you switching employers, you're going to develop the ability to adapt in different environments with different people, right? So all those elements of kind of being getting more diverse, learning new info, developing new skills, right? Those are situations that will provide you the ability to become more adaptable, right? That is a pro, right? Adaptability, being able to adjust, it is definitely something that is needed going forward in work careers, right? I know you want to be locked into certain, traditions or pathways or certain ways to doing things, but you still may have to be adaptable to a degree to get something done. And so it's a situation. The pro to that is it'll give you that ability to develop your ability to adapt there. And so the last one I have is just networking. I talk about this often. It's different networking where you're not getting so ingrained into those relationships, like I previously said, but it is an opportunity for you to network with a new group of people, which will build your network, right, of people that you know. And it can help you further your career. You're going to work with people at different companies. And if you move to more companies, you're going to have those relationships you've established there as well. So always do a good job, obviously, but it is a new network that allows you to expand your network, sometimes a little bit quicker, because you know this group from this company and this group from this company. And so you can kind of use that as a bridge, a gap, and even help them out. Maybe people in these two groups want to work, want to switch jobs. And so you can be a resource or a conduit to that, to help vouch for people in that aspect of it. So let's talk about the cons. I think anytime you switch jobs, right, even if no matter how excited you are, the new car smell, there is a level of uncertainty, right? You think it's going to be a good environment, right? But you don't know specifically. Like you don't definitively know it's going to be great, right? For the most part, right? I would say, but there's just a level of uncertainty, right? It's a new company. You're just going on what you know, information you've been able to gather, but you haven't been ingratiated or in the company to really know what's going on inside of the company there as well. And so there is a level of uncertainty. Maybe the company's unstable. It could be a volatile situation there as well, but that is something that I think that is a con. Definitely you want to be aware of and be mindful of that in your decision-making process there. The next piece, I had it as a pro, but it is a con, right? Adaptability, right? It may not be for everyone, right? I think everyone should learn to be adaptable, but some people can't. It's just they're not wired that way to adapt quickly, right? If you're switching jobs like that, you got to be able to adapt to pretty quick, right? You got to move forward and kind of get ingrained into that company's ways of thinking as well. And so that's not necessarily a pro for everyone. So some people don't like that, right? They like to know, things are what they are. The company is what it is as well. And so I got that listed as a con, right? I think that's something you want to recognize. And I have the third one here, just no loyalty. I think it's one of those myths to a degree, but I will say that it can be looked at in certain ways that you don't have any loyalty to the company if you're continuously job hopping, right? If you're switching jobs every month or every 3 months, right, consistently, that's not necessarily a good thing, right? You need to assess that. Now, if you're doing contract work, that's something totally different, but it can be perceived as no loyalty. If you're applying for jobs, they can see, hey, you've switched jobs multiple times over your career. My best tip on that is just have a story as why you switch jobs, right? It doesn't mean that you shouldn't switch in a few months there, but you need to make sure it makes sense there. But you don't want to have a consistent pattern, right? If you switched every 3 months over a couple of years, it's not necessarily a good thing. But if you've switched just because something happened, okay, understandable. Just make sure you can tell your story on that as well. And then the last one I have is just starting over. Some people don't like the aspect of starting over because you really got to move into this new company. You got to build your reputation from scratch. They got to get to know you again. It's kind of that, we're on a first date relationship building, if we will. And so that can be an environment that, people don't want to do, or it can be a con as well, is because, when you're with one company, they know you, they know your relationship, you're having a bad day. Okay, we just know, Marcus is like that. Whereas if you switch companies and you may be having a bad day, it may be bad timing, and it may give you, you may get some type of title or stigma on you in that aspect as well. But that is a con. I definitely just make sure you be aware of that if that's something that you don't like to do, to kind of start over and build a relationship, build credibility in that aspect of it. So now I want to give you, 3 things. So we've talked about the pros and cons of each. So I want to give you 3 things just to think about when you're trying to decide on, staying with the company you've been with, or staying with the one company over your work career, or moving in your work career to another company there as well, moving multiple times as well. First thing I want to tell you is think about your career goals and growth, right? Do you need to move to other companies to be able to get the skill set or the development that you're looking for, right? So understand your particular industry is the second one to that, right? So you need to assess your career goals and growth. And then the second element to that is understanding your industry, right? So I said those 2. I said I'm going to give you 3, but I wanted to give those 2 together. Here's why I say that. A teacher versus someone who's in finance has a totally different industry and career direction, right? And so it's not necessarily advantageous for a teacher to continue to move from school district to school district every single school year, right? It may not be in her favor. She may have to move over the course, but you typically don't see teachers just continue to switch schools or school districts, I should say, every single school year, right? Whereas finance, you may need to move from one company, right? It may be more in line for you to switch jobs. So understanding your career goals and growth, and then second to that is your industry itself, right? And that's why you want to make sure, a tip here, I was going to say it, save it to the end, but I'll say it now. Make sure you're networking. Continue to network. And I can't emphasize how important networking is. It is extremely important that you network with people in your company and people outside of your company, in your field or not in your field, right? Just network. It will help you in ways you cannot believe. I'm telling you, network. And so career goals and growth, your industry. The last one I have here is just your personal preferences and risk tolerance, right? So you understand what your personal preferences are and your risk tolerance, right? Because the cons that I've listed, they're essentially a risk, if you will, right? Because, something could go wrong and you may not like that, or it may not be what you're willing to take on. So understand your personal preferences and your risk tolerance there. And then I had 2 tips I was going to give you. I said one earlier, just stay networking. I can't stress it enough. Just continue to network with your peers, people older than you, younger than you, in different fields, in different parts of the country, different parts of your company. It will help you, beyond your belief there as well. And then if you do decide to leave your company, never leave the company in bad standing. Always give proper notice, right? I can't, because you may want to come back to that company. It may be an opportunity for you to return later down the road. And if you left on a bad standing, on bad terms, you didn't get proper notice, it's not going to work in your favor. So, always stay connected. Never leave a job on bad terms. Give proper notice. And it'll set you up for success in that aspect as well. So again, we talked about the pros and cons of working at one company your entire career versus switching to different employers there. I hope you guys found this content valuable. Let me know in the comments if I missed anything, a pro and a con on either of those. And let me know what you think, I should be talking about in the next episode there as well. So as always, if I'm lit and you lit, then we lit, so stay lit.